Speedway, the site of speed. These fellas found it last year. Chad Knaus, Jimmy Johnson, defending champions. Kyle Busch, who had a great regular season, looking to rebound in this year's chase. Greg Biffle, could he be a contender for the Cup? We're about to find out as Sprint Cup cars hit the track for the first time in 2009. Not that any points are at stake. It's the Budweiser Shootout opening round practice. The name is the same, the race is completely different. Yes, it has two segments, but it's been lengthened to 75 laps, 25 and 50 with a 10-minute pit stop in between. And winning a pole is no longer a prerequisite to getting in the shootout. We're going to take the top 6 in 2008 owner points of each manufacturer and then add one wild card entry from each manufacturer. So 4 makes of cars, 7 each, 28 cars. A big field for the Budweiser Shootout.
We're back.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Daytona. Mike Choi, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip, cellmates again for the 9th consecutive year, and having a ball at it. We couldn't wait to come back, and hope you enjoy this opening round of practice for the Budweiser Shootout. So, Darrell, basically it's a whole new race. The distance is similar. It's a shortened field, and it's go for broke because points don't matter.
No, and the format is similar to what we've seen in the past, but this is not a bunch of slow leaks in this race. I got to tell you, you got winners of the Daytona 500, you got winners of the Budweiser Shootout, you got former champions. So this is a field of stellar drivers, and they're going to go out here with no testing, and they go out here and put a real good show on tomorrow night, and it's going to be fun to watch, I guarantee you.
Larry, what will the crew chiefs and their teams learn from this opening round?
Well, they're going to have to learn a lot, and they have a short time to learn it. Like Darrell mentioned, these race cars, they've not been on the racetrack in January like we were in so many years past. And when you think about the 28 teams, Mike, half those race teams have a brand new driver crew chief combination. So these guys are going to be sticking their head in that window saying, okay, just how loose is it? Just how tight is it? So they're not only trying to learn about their race car in these 2 practice sessions, they're trying to learn about each other and their race teams as well.
I got good news. There are only 8 guys in this race that have never been in it before. But I got bad news, too.
They're all up front.
They all start up front.
They're all starting up front. And we'll get to the grid a little later on because the grid was determined by a blind and frozen cold draw yesterday evening that Steve Burns conducted on Speed. So while Steve is still thawing out, we're getting ready for opening practice at Daytona. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway for Joe Gibbs Racing. There's his senior driver. As Denny Hamlin pointed out at the banquet, he's now the oldest of that trio. There's the youngest, Joey Logano, about to come on track for the very first time in a Sprint Cup car at Daytona. You're going to need a chart to keep up with all the changes. We'll help you through it during this session. It's the warmest it's been all week. 58 degrees.
And it's actually supposed to start getting better and better, but that's actually what's forecasted for about 8 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow night when this race is supposed to get the green flag.
Which is good because that means the track's going to have some grip in it this afternoon. Got a little wind blowing. There's our wind gauge.
Remember the TV show Laugh-In and the Flying Fickle Finger of Fate award?
Oh, yeah.
Matt Yoakum has more on the story.
Mike, this session marks the opening day of 2009 as Carl Edwards making his way to his car. Now, the lack of winter testing proved to be a great advantage for reigning champion Jimmy Johnson. At the Rolex 24 Hours 3 weeks ago, he sliced his finger on his left hand through the tendon, through the tissue, down to the bone, even hitting an artery. Stitches. He spent time with the doctors at CMC, the hospital up in Charlotte, North Carolina. They fabricated a brace for his finger to be worn inside his glove. He told me moments ago he tried a couple different pair of gloves. The brace just is not going to work. So this is going to be a great session for Jimmy just to see what type of issues that injury will pose for him as we begin the 2009 season. Now it's my honor to throw it across the garage to the editor of Speedway Illustrated, Dr. Dirt, Dick Berggren.
Well, thank you, Matty. Tony Stewart's getting ready to go out on the racetrack. I'm in his garage. Tony is a 3-time winner of the Budweiser Shootout, but that was all with his old Joe Gibbs team, and this year everything is new. He's about to drive a car he's never driven for a lap before. He's got a new crew chief, a new car chief, a new pit crew that has never serviced a car for him on a pit stop, everything is new for Tony Stewart. But he has driven for so many different teams and so many different kinds of racing. I figure it's going to take him about 2 laps to get used to all of this. The goal in this practice session, get the car so comfortable Tony can drive it all the way around every single lap with his foot flat on the floor.
Dick, you're right as we have a look at Carl Edwards. New colors on his number 99 this year. But for one thing with Tony Stewart, he has never turned a lap in competition in a Sprint Cup car for anyone other than Joe Gibbs Racing. 10 years.
Other thing that I thought was interesting, that he's using one of those carbon fiber seats that Hendrick produces, and he had never used one of those before either. So yeah, it's familiar surroundings to some degree, but you know, just those little nuances like that, sometimes it throws the driver's timing off a little bit, so he may have some issues to work through.
We spent some time with Tony earlier today, and he said he may not get right up in the thick of things to start this practice. He may want to feel this car out. That car is actually a car that Scott Riggs drove in the Daytona 500 last year.
I'll lay a little money on the line that he does.
Tony's old ride now occupied by 18-year-old Joey Logano, making his first Sprint Cup appearance in the Budweiser Shootout. Practice next here on Speed. Nice day in Daytona. Cloudless sky, but the temperature struggling to get to 60 degrees. 25 of 28 cars in line to get ready for practice. Now, last night they drew for starting positions, and most of the top 10 spots stayed till very late in the draw, which went sort of by point standing order. So Paul Menard and Elliott Sadler find themselves on the front row for the shootout. Reed Sorensen, Scott Speed, and former winners Denny Hamlin and Tony Stewart.
Yeah, Paul Menard, Scott Speed, they've never run a Budweiser Shootout before. Of course, Scott Speed only has 5 Cup starts total.
Carl Edwards, a spot in the 6th row. A couple more rookies, Allmendinger and Logano, rookies in this race, that is. There was Stremme in row 10. Jimmy Johnson, and look who drew the caboose spot, Jeff Gordon. And looking at this lineup, that may not be such a bad draw where he and Harvick start, should it?
Pretty happy about that, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't a good night for the Chevrolet boys for drawing, because we only have 2 starting in the top 20.
And there's Dick Berger next to Paul Menard's car.
Yeah, he's just sitting here, Mike. He's just going to bide his time a little bit and wait for things to start to happen out on the racetrack before he goes out. And not to worry about Paul Menard starting on the pole in this race tomorrow night, because he has started on the pole here previously at Daytona. Did that last July. Everything worked out just fine. He's run 3 full races here at Daytona, so he should be just fine when the green flag drops.
Well, he's the first of the changes we'll chart, because last year Menard drove a Chevrolet for DEI. Now he's in a Ford Fusion for Doug Yates, the Menard sponsorship, and Paul moved over to the Yates organization.
And he had a whale of a Talladega race this last year when he and his teammate thought he won the race, but he didn't. And he ran great all day long, stayed right up front.
Let's go to Matt with a familiar looking car with a new face behind the wheel.
Mike, one storyline during the Budweiser Shootout weekend is veterans and rookies, and it's a combo platter here on the 20 team. They've gone to victory lane in the Budweiser Shootout 3 different times, and that was with Tony Stewart. Now with young Joey Logano in this ride. 12 years ago, he was just a rookie in quarter midgets at the age of 6. Now he's in what's going to be the biggest show of this weekend, an all-star race for the manufacturers. And, you know, he just came on the radio very quietly, just said, what do you want me to do, Zippy, during this session? You want me to start out and just drop to the back, or do you want me to try to go to the front? He goes, you do whatever you feel most comfortable. And I think probably the guy who's most excited about this session kicking off, his father, Tom, who's on top of the 20 hauler, getting ready to see his son begin his Sprint Cup career.
You know, Mike, you asked me at the top of the show about what are these guys trying to achieve and try to learn during this practice session. There you see Tom Logano. He's about the second from the left there with the headset on. There's been a slight change in the tire since we were here last year. So these guys, these crew chiefs like Greg Zipadelli, they want a good look at the tires. They want to see what the balance of the car is based on what the tire information gives them. The engine guys, they want to look at the tuning of these engines. There's a lot of things that happen in these 2 practice sessions.
But I think the number one thing, and Darrell talks about a lot, and so do you, communication. We talk about Tony Stewart, his first drive in a Cup car for other than Joe Gibbs. This is the first time Greg Zipadelli has been a Sprint Cup crew chief for anyone but Tony Stewart. Now, he had a lot of experience, and there's Zippy, prior to coming to Joe Gibbs Racing as a crew chief, won a title in, what's it now, Camping World East. I think it was Busch North then. But it's his first time with this new driver, and so there's Zippy. There's a lot of these communication issues that need to be sorted out here as much as possible in this first session.
We just heard it. Logano calls in and says, what do you want me to do? You know, I mean, that in and of itself is totally different than Tony Stewart calling in and say, let me tell you what I'm going to do.
And while we're on the subject of communication, a lot of these guys have a different spotter, a new spotter. And trust me, the communication between that spotter and that driver is about as critical here at Daytona drafting practice as the communication between the crew chief and the driver. There's the spotters there atop the main grandstand.
And doesn't that list of new spotters start right at the top of the Sprint Cup points with Jimmy Johnson?
Yeah, Earl Barbin, who did spot for him at one point in time back in the day, but you got to get your feet wet back with each other.
And Matt Kenseth's got a new spotter, so there's some changes been made.
He's got his new old spotter
well,
back.
He got his old spotter back.
Yeah. Track is open. And whether you feel the winter layoff has been a long one or a short one, it's over. There's cars on track at Daytona.
And one thing that is kind of neat about no testing, after the 24-hour race, once they had the 24-hour race, it seemed like every time we'd come back here to start this practice, the track would be totally different than what we had experienced in testing. They're not going to deal with that today. The track is exactly like it is.
See Michael Waltrip in that 55 Toyota up there, and we were talking about this on our NASCAR live show. A lot of Toyotas down here, and of course the strength they showed last year at the restrictor plate racetracks. In fact, they won everything after we left the Daytona 500, both Talladegas and the summer July race here.
Elliott Sadler is the first car in line. Back in the number 19, there was a little off-season intrigue concerning Sadler. For a while it looked as if he might be out of that car, but everybody got their heads back together and agreed to agree, and Elliott Sadler returns in this car that'll be sponsored partly by Stanley and in some races by Best Buy.
14,
Tony Stewart, 14
car there. It's got a little something kind of loose on the left, behind the left front tire there, flopping around. I don't know if it's a decal or a little something flopping around, I noticed.
Yeah, back to Elliott Sadler, Mike. I heard him say yesterday at Media Day, he said, you know what? I needed a wake-up call, but I believe the race team needed a wake-up call. And when we got sideways on some things, that was the wake-up call for the two of us.
You know what I think's happened to the 14? You can see up near the left front tire there, right at the bottom. I think that might be the valence of the side there that's these things will bottom out a little bit when they first got on the racetrack.
You know what it is, Darrell? That silver part is a decal, and down there at the bottom is a plastic rocker skirt. You can almost see where the brake's at right there. It's like the decal is not sticking to that rocker skirt.
She's going to come unwrapped.
Greg Biffle right behind Tony.
And I like the way
Jack Roush, and a lot of people like Biffle's chances this year.
Just like Tony said, I'm going to go out and follow the back and see how it feels. Yeah. Yes, sir.
How'd that work?
Yeah, how'd that work out for you?
Greg Biffle won the first two races of the chase for the Sprint Cup. Had a strong finish to the season.
And you know, speaking of Tony, and basically you're looking at it as a Hendrick race car. It's Hendrick power, Hendrick chassis, pretty much a Hendrick race car. And I remember what Dale Jr. said when he got over to Hendrick. He said, you know, after I drove their cars for a few laps, I realized how come they were so hard to beat. And I got a feeling that Tony Stewart's probably saying the same thing about now.
I think that shot right there just shows us just how bumpy this racetrack is. The car never quits moving around this 2.5-mile racetrack.
Now, Tony told us this morning they did go and do a little bit of testing this winter. They took a car down to New Smyrna Speedway, which is just south of Daytona Beach, where they're running modifieds and ASA late models all week here during Speed Week in the evenings. And they did a little testing to make sure that the seat and the steering wheel and that his surroundings were comfortable. But no super speedway testing, of course, as we look at Denny Hamlin. Look from Denny Hamlin's car.
And he and Ryan both said that these cars drive a little bit different than the Penske Dodge did, and And the
Boy,
Toyota.
Joey Logano
Wow.
had his hands full there in that 20 car.
Whoa, baby.
That was a hold on and hope moment.
That's him we're looking at right there.
Want to see it again?
I'm not sure.
Watch the 20, middle of your screen, the orange car.
I watched him a few laps before this, and it kind of did the same thing. It just did it a whole lot more that time.
This is looking back from Logano at Jamie McMurray.
Didn't look near as bad from that view.
Yeah, I was going to say, boys, I know y'all never have driven one of these things, but that was a non-event right there.
Opening practice for tomorrow night's Budweiser Shootout that you'll see on Fox. Kyle Busch has the fastest lap of practice. Jimmy Johnson, Matt Kenseth, Reed Sorensen, and A.J. Allmendinger. Teammates, new teammates at Richard Petty Motorsports, which was Gillette Evernham combined with Petty Enterprises, and it's going to take some sorting to get all that figured out. But
RPM, and notice anything about his left rear tire and his donut on his door, and they were bumping around pretty good up here in the middle of 3 and 4. He's in the middle right here. Comes off, the car's pushing, it gets a little bit loose. When she straightens up, hello.
Got in the side of Greg Biffle's 16 car, and then down into Robbie Gordon in the 7.
It's a cue ball right there.
Look at it from Carl Edwards' point of view.
Carl saying, oops, oops, oops. Oh,
excuse me, pardon me.
Yeah.
Coming through.
Go in and do a little cleanup on the car.
Kevin Harvick, Robbie Gordon, and also
maybe even in the car.
All right, I was reminded during commercial we're 22 minutes into this practice. We have not yet mentioned the driver who is 6th fastest on the day. I guess it's about time. Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the 88.
The winner of this race a year ago.
Drafting off Brian Vickers. Kyle Busch just ahead.
He's kind of doing his normal deal at Daytona in a practice session, a lot like what his dad would do. He'll kind of get to the back, play around a little bit, and then see if he can work his way up through the pack there during practice.
Looks like he's got a pretty good run on him right here.
Kyle Busch drifting to the back a little bit while his older brother Kurt is in the garage. Dick Berggren's there.
Yeah, the car is bouncing around a little bit on Kurt. It's a little bit loose as well, so he has brought it to the attention of his crew, which is a familiar bunch of people. Same crew chief, just a different car chief. So they're going to work on it now, try to make the car a little bit more comfortable. Matt Yoakum.
Big same faces on the crew and driver here in the 29 garage of Kevin Harvick, who won the Daytona 500 back in 2007. Harvick pleased with his race car, so it's very good in the middle, free off of turn 4. And to go back to a comment that the guys in the booth, Mike, Larry, and DW were talking about, it looked like some cars experiencing some bounce issues, bump issues on the racetrack, and that's what Harvick said. He said there's a lot of movement with the back end of the race car, especially over the bumps in turn 4.
And just remember, Larry, Mike, these guys have not tested here. They have not been in a race car. And how fast are they running here, Larry? 190 miles an hour going around here, 2 wide, 3 wide for the first time since November.
Yeah.
And at the front of the pack now, David Ragan. Once again in the Roush Racing number 6, new sponsorship. He duels with Jeff Gordon. And Gordon has Casey Kane giving him a little help down the short chute to turn 1.
And you know, I'm not surprised to see David Ragan in that 6 car up there, because that car was fast every time we was at a restrictor plate race last year. He had a great race at Talladega, and it seemed like they were strong every time we came to Daytona or Talladega.
Larry, is it fair to say, and if the number of teams you can have are 4, and Roush has got 5 right now, somebody in that crowd is going to have to be moving on.
This is the last year that you can. They grandfathered Jack Roush Fenway in because of sponsorship commitments, but 2009 is the last year he has to be shaved back to 4.
So if you're David Ragan or you're Jamie McMurray, who have sort of been odd men out, I guess you'd say, they're probably both working pretty hard to save their jobs this year.
Well, I'd say especially considering he just re-signed Greg Biffle, Carl Edwards, and Matt Kenseth the contract extensions last year.
NASCAR mandated a cap on team ownership. 4 teams is all you can field, but for the one exception due to honoring an existing contract. And here's how Roush Fenway Racing sorts out in the early going of this practice.
Tell you what, watching Joey Logano on that 20 car, here's what I think Greg Zipadelli told him that he wanted him to do. Start running when you see the green and quit running when you see the red and the black flag. Nothing like seat time.
Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson are still quickest in the opening round of Budweiser Shootout practice at Daytona. Speed is dueling in Daytona. Next Thursday, the most exciting qualifying event in NASCAR is only on Speed, the Gatorade Duel at Daytona. Be there for the 2 races that set the field for the 500. Live Thursday at 2 o'clock Eastern, NASCAR on Speed.
They're going to be big too. We're going to have about 28, 29 cars in each of those dual races.
Boy, Bob Labonte in the Bud car there, or no, that's Casey Kane. Sorry about that. In the Bud car, he was slideways off the turn 4 that time. Well, you get cars around you just right. Looks like these cars have a tendency to want to step out just a tad.
From Casey Kane, looking back at Greg Biffle.
But Darrell, I think what is going on is they were not testing at the racetrack, but they've been testing on the pull-down rigs and in the shaker machines. And what they're trying to do here is no different than what they'll do at California in 2 weeks, Las Vegas, is pull these things down and just let them ride there on the springs and on the bump stops and on the chassis stops.
Yeah, that's why they hop around the way they do. Just hitting solid. There's not a lot of spring action there. It jumps off the spring, actually.
Hard to simulate that little push, little shove you get, though.
Yeah, you don't get that on the 7-poster.
Well, and not only that, but on the 7-post, you're not turning the wheels to the left. You know, you're pulling it down with the car almost like it's going straight. Now you throw in turning to the left and hitting some bumps, and then that makes things a little more complicated.
David Stremme in the 12. For Roger Penske, there's Dale Jr. and Matt Kenseth. For Roush Fenway Racing.
Down to a pack of looks like about 8 cars now on the back straightaway. And there you see Joey Logano, the 20. He's still making circles. Dale Earnhardt Jr., the 88, still out there.
And he is staying on the bottom. That's one thing I've noticed. He hadn't moved that car around much. He's been right around the bottom, thick or thin. He's kind of hung right there, which I think is probably a good idea.
You know, I was reading some of Joey Logano's quotes, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, very possibly could have a pit stop in that final 50 laps because it's questionable without cautions. Can you make the distance? Joey said, you know, I even have to learn how to make a pit stop at Daytona. I think that's one of the reasons they're going to be running him in the ARCA race, which will be on Speed prior to the Budweiser Shootout, is just to learn some of those nuances.
And I believe he qualified 3rd fastest in ARCA time trials earlier today. He started racing quarter midgets near his hometown in Middletown, Connecticut. Won the Pro Legends Championship at age 12. And at age 14 signed a development contract with Joe Gibbs. And he'll be the youngest driver ever to start the 500.
I was racing go-karts when I was 12. I was racing go-karts when I was 18.
But Darrell, this is a tricky racetrack to make a green flag pit stop. I mean, you have to be on your game.
Oh, yeah, that's part of it. And particularly if there's any chance you want to take 2 tires. If the driver smokes it down there and slides the tires, then you got to change 4.
Bob Osborne talking to Carl Edwards about their run. I was trying to look and see roughly how many laps that Carl had run when he was out there. He ran about 14 laps.
We also saw Pierre Cattell in the picture there briefly. What Jack Roush has done for Carl Edwards is taken all of the best of last year's Cup team and his championship nationwide winning team, put all those folks together to support Carl's Cup effort. And he says the depth in that team is fantastic, and to have all of that to draw from makes him very, very optimistic about this season.
And you know, when you look at all of the Sprint Cup Series teams, this team from the drop of the green flag in Daytona to the checkered flag in Homestead probably had the most consistent season of anybody. You look at the chase. They had 7 top 3 finishes, 8 top 4 finishes, but that little snafu at Talladega, the ignition boxes at Lowe's Motor Speedway was enough to keep them from winning the championship.
If he'd have just had one of those things, it'd have been all right.
Cue the duck. We'll be right back. Test your NASCAR trivia skills with hundreds of challenging questions like, who was the Cup runner-up in 2003 and 4? Then see how you rank. It's at speedtv.com/games to play now.
Not sure on that one.
Matt Kenseth? Survey said? No? What did you say? Yeah, runner-up. Jimmy Johnson, Bill Sloboda says.
Okay.
And
that's right.
if he's right, Bill Sloboda said it. And if he's not right.
It's kind of like this race, though. Nobody cares who comes in second.
Right. Right.
Good point. Bobby Labonte has a new deal for 2009 with Yates Racing. Ask.com, Ford Fusion, number 96. With teammate Paul Menard out there on track.
Teamed old Bobby back up with Todd Parrott. Todd Parrott to be the crew chief on his car this year. Bobby and Todd worked together a few years ago at Petty Enterprises.
You know, it takes a lot of confidence, though, to walk out of a deal like he had with Petty and not have anything really know what you're going to do for the future, and then have what might be a pretty good deal come together for you right here just before time to come to Daytona.
Now, I say Yates Racing. That of course was Hall of Fame racing last year and still is Hall of Fame racing in an alliance with Yates Racing.
I'm just going to be glad we finally get through the first 5 races on that one.
If I can make an alliance with someone for Daytona and Talladega, it would be with Yates.
Yeah, there you go. Matt.
Mike, Greg Zipadelli conversing with his new driver, Joey Logano, debriefing after 18 laps so far of practice in this session. And Joey, you witnessed it on the video, Joey telling his team the car was just crazy loose, especially when he got someone on the outside of him. But then after around 10 or 11 laps, it really started to push on the exit of 2 and especially off of 4. So they're going to talk about a lot of different things that they might want to just little tweaks here and there on this race car. But you talk a lot about experience. Yes, you've got Greg Zipadelli. Yes, you've got Mark Robertson, longtime spotter on this 20 team. But there's a voice that we've been hearing on the team's radio and talking a lot about variables, things that Joey Logano might see in front of him, not only in this practice session, but throughout Speed Week, different things for him to do. Maybe that he's not exactly thinking about, but things that might pop up, and that's Magic Shoes Mike McLaughlin. He's been there. He's been to victory lane, a veteran driver, and he's been acting as a coach to young Joey Logano for the past year or so. So we've been hearing a lot of Magic Shoes on the team radio. Dick Berggren?
Well, last year, David Ragan knocked on the door of victory lane repeatedly, but it wouldn't open. This year, a lot of people think he's going to kick it in completely. How good is this car?
It's completely in gear. Our UPS Ford is fast. Man, it feels good to get out there and start making some laps again. The off-season was starting to go by a little slow in January, but I think our Ford is fast. It seems to drive really well on the bottom and in the top, and certainly we just kind of wanted to check everything out and get everybody back in the rhythm, but looking forward to tomorrow's Bud Shootout.
So many first-time winners here at Daytona. You're going to be one of them?
Absolutely. One day we are, and it could be this weekend. We certainly always are thinking about winning a race. That's very important to us and UPS, but we've just got to take it one practice and one lap at a time, and if it comes our way, we'll be ready for it.
Good attitude. Mike?
David Ragan could be his breakthrough season.
Another guy that's a familiar name at Gibbs Racing and been around racing about as long as I have is Jimmy Makart. You see him right here in the picture. He's been over there. He's a winning crew chief. He's been over at Gibbs for a number of years now, and it's kind of interesting to me that Jimmy is actually leaning in there talking to young Joey. I'm not sure if that's just because of all the experience he has had with cars here at Daytona.
He had a great run as crew chief for Bobby Labonte there.
Bobby, yeah.
Won the 1993 Daytona 500 actually with Dale Jarrett. And he was the #1 employee that Joe Gibbs first hired to put that whole program together. The crew chief for the 18 car, and he's still there pulling the levers and the knobs.
He's a Robert G. protege. Robert G. is Dale Jr. and Kelly's grandfather, and he went to school at Robert G.'s garage on Hudspeth Road.
University of Robert G.
That's right. RG. Big G.
Not much change in the fastest times. They were set early in this session by Kyle Busch and this man, Jimmie Johnson. This February, a high school rivalry gets settled on the track. Drag Race High returns to speed for an all-new season. Two teams have to build a car from the ground up and then face off in the ultimate drag race showdown. Top Fuel champ Clay Millican will guest judge. Don't miss the season premiere of Drag Race High, February 18th, only on Speed.
Lose the race, lose your deployment. It's got to be it.
All right, so explain to me what's happening here, because the track is open for practice. There has been no yellow flag, and yet everybody is lined up and waiting for
a bigger pack,
not
more
enough
cars.
Not enough cars.
Yeah, that's only 7 cars. You're not going to learn a whole lot there.
We're just waiting for some more
There's
guys.
more coming here.
Here comes Jeff Burton in his new colors for Richard Childress Racing. I like the tracks on that Caterpillar. That's pretty cool. Here's the best 5-lap average in this practice session, and the same names, 3 of them are at the top: Busch, Johnson, and Kenseth. Dale Jr. Scott Speed. How is he going to do?
He's going to do all right.
He's in a fast race car. Got Jimmy Elledge working on the car as his crew chief, and I asked him how come they changed that car from 84 to 82. And they said that the Red Bull people are big in a driver having an identity. And since A.J. Allmendinger had driven this car for almost 2 full years as 84, they wanted to give Scott a new identity with a new number. So that's the reason the 82 was available. The other side of the 83, so they just went with the 82 number.
Well, let's see, he's 26 years old. I wonder if he was born in 1982.
That might work out as well as the red rear wheels, too.
That's only on race day. I did learn that.
Oh, it is? They only do it on race day? Yeah, that's good.
Well, let's go to Matt Yoakum with a man last seen on Speed on the auction block at Barrett-Jackson.
And Mike, a few moments ago, talking to the fans high above us in the fan zone, Rick Hendrick, the owner, beginning his 26th season in NASCAR Sprint Cup Series competition. So many great memories here, and you are so excited to see you walking down to all the different teams under the Hendrick Motorsports banner. You're excited to finally get the season underway.
Boy, you know, at the end of the year, you would like to take a break. And then after, you know, it's been a while and no testing, and I think everybody was getting antsy, and it feels so good to walk into the garage and see the fans and get ready for the new year, and just a lot going on. It doesn't seem like it's been 26 years ago that I came down here, but I'll tell you what, I'm not as nervous as I was the first time, for sure.
Well, talking about a lot of your memories, what's your favorite Daytona memory?
Golly, I just remember the first time I got down here, and I looked out on pit road and the Wood brothers and Junior Johnson and Petty's, and I said, man, I shouldn't be down here. And we didn't have a sponsor, and I guess just Jeff Bodine winning that first race, and you know, dreamed about just getting to go to Daytona. And I remember my mom and dad had come down here just a few years before, and you know, just to be able to end up in a sport that you just idolized, and then a place that was almost like sacred ground, Daytona, and to be able to stand in victory lane. You know, I was just thankful to be here, qualify for this race and get in it, but to win it was just really special. That first one will always be number one.
The last time we saw you was at Barrett-Jackson out in Arizona. You made a number of purchases. Have you got all your cars back to North Carolina yet?
I'll tell you what, bidding on them is more fun than paying for them when it's over. Yeah, you know, we had Jeff's car at that race, a lot of money for, you know, the Merit Foundation, and it was a lot of fun. If you're a car guy, you really need to go to Barrett-Jackson and see all the cars that you grew up idolizing or wanting to own, and you probably never did. And so I got into the rhythm out there and bought a couple and got them home, and it's really neat place, and that was a lot of fun. And I hope Ron Pratt's watching today that bought that car, and but it was a ton of fun. I'm gonna go back here. I'll go down there in April and watch it again.
All right, thank you, Rick.
Thanks, man.
One of my favorite memories when his cars ran 1, 2, and 3, Jeff Gordon winning the Daytona 500. I think Labonte was second, and
Ricky
Craven was third. That was a great race for Rick as well.
Except that Rick wasn't here. Racing Electronics hooked him up with a two-way so that from home he could talk to his drivers on track. That was pretty trick.
It was. He's had some great memories here, I can tell you.
So the guys finally got enough cars they wanted to get out there and do a little practicing, and we've got about 11 cars out there right now. And speaking of Rick Hendrick, the 48 car, we've been watching him. He's in this pack right here.
This is coming off turn 4.
Up behind the 44 car there, and car just, it kind of picks up that push where the front end's sliding, then the front bites, and then it's a little bit loose. And it's like we're seeing that on a lot of race cars in the exit of turn 4.
Yeah, the front, yeah, you can see Jimmy's car is really sliding the rear around a lot. But here's something to think about. Joey Logano comes in and says, my car, I could hardly drive it for the first 8 or 10 laps. Really, really bad loose. And then, whoa, that's really, really bad loose when you got somebody stuck up on the back end of you like that. But they start these cars out that way. And that's the secret to success. Who can hang on to the thing for 8 or 10 laps while waiting for it to come to you, so then you can go racing. That's the tricky part.
44 there is A.J. Allmendinger in one of the Richard Petty Motorsports cars. That's the new name for what was Gillette Evernham Racing and Petty Enterprises in their off-season merger.
We tried that a few times, me and Hammond, and I'd be saying, I can't, I'm so loose, I'm going to wreck this thing. He said, just be patient, it'll come to you. And the second time they went by me, it was starting to come around. She was starting to feel pretty good.
Well, you look at Joey Logano, he ran 18 laps. That's almost a half of a run. The reason that thing started getting a little bit tight on him, it started burning that fuel load, putting some nose weight into it.
The Hall of Fame is taking shape in Charlotte, North Carolina. It will open in 2010. And here in Daytona, Speedway stock car portion of Speed Weeks is up and running with the opening round of practice for the Budweiser Shootout. All 28 cars have been on track for at least 5 or more laps. Kyle Busch has run 22 laps. That's the most, or rather second most of any driver. Matt Kenseth's run 24, Casey Kane 23.
Yeah, this will probably be about the last run of this practice session for most of these guys. And the old engine tuner, I'm sure, told the crew chief, get them to get me a plug check where they shut that thing off at RPM, where they look at the spark plugs before the final practice coming up in about an hour and a half, and make sure they've got that thing tuned just as good as they can with this carburetor restrictor plate.
That's an interesting point, Larry, because with the unleaded gasoline that they run now, that 99 octane Sunoco GTX, is the plug check as beneficial a tuning tool as it used to be in the days of leaded gas?
Boy, I didn't mean to dodge your question,
right.
but Kyle Busch, again, turn 4, coming off turn 4 on the bottom. We were almost looking at his right door that time. Let's take a look at this again. He was on the bottom, just coming off of turn 4.
Car 18.
Second car right there behind the 6th car. It hits those bumps, and then he gets on that late exit and just gets in that little bit of slide.
Now that's when I'd have been heading right on back down pit road right there, but he never even lifted. He just stayed right in it, held his position, and that's what he is so good at.
But Mike, back to your question. Yeah, I think it's still important, but I think with the tools these guys have today at the shops, they almost know exactly how they want these things tuned when they get here. The only thing that they have to adjust to then is possibly the weather.
And plus they can take a borescope light and look down inside and look at the top of the pistons and the cylinder walls, and they do a lot of sophisticated things that we just usually did simple things like cut it off and get a plug check.
Usually, yeah, you'd take those spark plugs over to Earl Parker from Champion, and he'd read them and tell you what you needed to do.
Exactly.
NASCAR
Life was so much simpler.
Oh, it was, yeah. NASCAR has worked so hard to do everything they can to help the owners with the cost of doing business in this sport. That's one of the things that led to the no testing, because it almost cost as much to go test as it would to go race. But one thing they really worked hard at this winter pretty happy with where everything was at in 2008. There was essentially no rule changes, because every time they make a rule change, trust me, it costs the owner money. No matter if it's long-term or short-term, we essentially had no changes for 2009.
And it's really a lot easier to adjust the plate size with the engine combination we got now. The engines that we had before were so restrictor plate specific that if you made a minor change in the plate, it changed their camshaft, rocker arms. But now with the way the engine is, it's more like an open engine.
Yeah.
And the plate's not affecting it quite as much as it used to.
Let's have a look at what happened to Carl Edwards here last time off turn number 4. Watch the 99.
Gets in that sucker hole and gets that front end bouncing, pushing. Whoa. It's a dadgum good thing that he was able to get in there in front of
David
Stremme.
Yeah. Man, that 12 car. It's almost like we just need to put a camera on turn 4 and lock it down. It's going to be big.
Actually, we have.
Caution is out. Apparently something just, or is that the end of the session?
It's close. We got about 5 minutes for the mile.
Red flag. A part came off of one of the cars right here. Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
You know what that looks like? That looks
box.
like the air box that puts fresh air down to the carburetor.
I think it is, Larry. Well,
no.
No,
that's not an air box.
No, that's a piece of aluminum from
under tray.
Maybe a tray under the car. Yeah.
Welcome back to the stock car portion of DirecTV Speed Weeks. Here in Daytona Beach, Budweiser Shootout practice, and we have found the source of the piece of debris that flew up on track out from under the nose of the 00 David Rudiman. Front car in line. Look right here. There it is.
It came
and there
loose,
it goes.
Started dragging, and then they're out from underneath the car. And
so what we used to do, Micah, we were talking off there a minute ago, was we used to put aluminum pans under the nose of the car to create downforce. That pan under there will cause the front end to be sucked down. They may have stuck something under there just to try it. Maybe they didn't have it in there as good as it needed to be, and that piece fell out.
Let's go to the garage and join Dick Bergman.
With Jamie McMurray, who has just come in off the racetrack. What's it like out there?
Just typical Daytona. It seems like, you know, the cars handle really well for 10 or 15 laps, and then as the tires wear out, it gets excessively greasy. So Crown Royal Ford Fusion is it's pretty good, though. I felt like, you know, we won here a couple years ago, and last year these are two of the races that we struggled at. The car had pretty good speed, but we didn't do a very good job of making it drive well, and I didn't do a very good job of drafting. So
yeah, but you're back with your old crew chief now. You got Donnie Wingo there. What's it like to reunite?
I'm very excited about having Donnie back. Really, we went to the Phoenix tire test, and it was so weird getting in the car for the first time, you know, and saying, "You got me, Donnie," and having him do his 10-4. So it's really good to have him back. And Lauren Reniers is spotting for me again this year, who spotted for me all my years at Ganassi. And it's so weird, you know, to hear those guys' voices back on the radio, but it's also very comforting for me. So I'm looking forward. I'm really excited. The way we ended last year, and I feel like we've only made our team better.
Good for you. And he wants to put the car back to where it was when he first started the practice session. So a lot of going back to the beginning.
Mike, we just had Carl Edwards in the 99 car, as well as Paul Menard in the 15. What we watched there, Daryl and I were talking about it not that long ago, is trying to hit pit road under green flag conditions. That's exactly what Carl Edwards was trying to get back in a rhythm to, is trying to get through 3 and 4, stay up to speed as much as possible, then hit pit road. Don't give up anything, but don't slide those tires, and be to the 55 miles per hour by the time you get to pit road speed. He was just trying to get back in a rhythm.
Now here's Logano and Harvick, and we'll show you what Larry's talking about.
You hear him, he's in the gas, in the gas. Let's see how far around here he comes before he
going to turn 3.
He's in the gas. Coming in. Still in the middle of 3 and 4, off of 4, still in the gas. I mean, that's all the way off turn 4 onto the short chute.
And just remember, that was over 190 miles per hour.
190 miles an hour.
3 and 4.
Down to 55 miles an hour.
The red and black flags are in the air. We will be back with you at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time in about an hour and a half with final practice for the Budweiser Shootout. Kyle Busch has won the opening round of practice with a lap of 191 miles an hour. Jimmy Johnson, Matt Kenseth, Reed Sorensen, and A.J. Allmendinger, the top 5. Now we're going live atop the fan deck, just astride the Sprint Cup garage area for NASCAR Live with Dave Despain. We'll see you in about 90 minutes.